Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. The eyes are rolling. I can't be arsed talking about Hibs, but here we are now. Joking. We're joined by the wonderful Ewan and Liam today. Ewan, how are you getting on?
Good, mate. Good weekend. Cards on the table. Didn't watch the Hibs game. I made my point clear that I had no interest really in these games. As is probably evident from the players as well. But I feel like we've seen that story plenty this season, so I feel like I could probably write an essay on what happened at the weekend just for watching the fucking highlights.
And Liam, apart from Hibs not being the most entertaining brand of football this weekend, did you get up to anything good at the bank holiday?
What did I get up to? Swimming with the wee one. Went out for dinner last night. Went to a place called Mowgli, an Indian street food on, I think it's Hanover Street. It will be. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's not been. It's like Indian sort of street food. It's mental because of all the sort of nice dishes we had. Actually, the best thing was probably a potato curry, which was just potatoes, tomatoes, and some spices. But it was phenomenal. It was really good. So highly recommend.
Nice.
I was just thinking there, Harry. I think I went out for dinner this weekend, but I'm trying to think where it was, and I just remembered I ventured to Nando's on Friday night. So if anyone's never been to Nando's, I'd highly recommend it.
All right, and just after that comment, I'm now excited to talk about Hibs. Thanks for that, Ian. I know I was telling you just before we started, I done a flat pack build. I built myself a wee chest of drawers because I wanted a bedside table for ages and not had one, so I thought I'll just get myself a drawer and then extra storage space. Get the croissant moving, guys. That's what I'm doing. But anyway, to Hibs at the weekend, we won't talk long about it because apart from 3 moments, there's not really too much to talk about. Liam, the goal, just a bit as bog standard as it comes for the one we scored.
Bog standard in what way?
I didn't see it. We just discussed beforehand, and you said it was a relatively meh goal.
It was just a bit of scramble over the line, to be honest. Scramble over the line in a game where there were plenty of chances, like good quality chances as well. But we didn't take them. We did take that one, obviously, the scrappy one, but wasn't a memorable goal. But I think that makes it 9 and 15 now for my lead.
It sounds stupid. Honestly.
Pretty good goal, innit? Imagine my team at the start of the season.
Hey,
we'd still have had the same defence.
Hey! And speaking of which, Ewan, oh my God, all of the problems that we seem to talk about last week we were trying to be defensive as some of the players, and I'd keep Rocky as a bench option and Wallacott as a bench option. And just as quickly as I'd said that, they very quickly showed me why that should be the case. Ewan, what happened for that first goal, man? Jesus.
Oh, right. So your sister got a lot of mentions last week, so she's going to get another one this week. I know she sent a message being like, "Oh, like Rocky will no doubt get hounded for that," and well, you can probably see why he would. Like he doesn't cover himself in glory, but I do think that he's probably unfortunate. I think he gets a little bit too far ahead of it. He's probably getting back in too quick, and the ball is then the wrong side of him, so he's trying to reposition himself, and he's just trying to get something on it. But you've got to defend the balls into the box. But I know, like Harry, it is the story of the season. Like Liam says, we've had the same defence all year, and we have conceded incredibly similar goals all season long. Just coming into the box, not dealing with it. A striker that sort of thrives on that, and Simon Murray, little loose balls in the box, one touch finishes. So it's just a good finish, but Hibs have got to be dealing with that better. And going into next season, it's got to be the number one priority, as I'm sure we'll come on to today.
And not want to like hound out Rocky. I think you can kind of see that and just accept that it was a pretty bad mistake to make in the box. But it's the same thing again. If it looks to me like he doesn't know what part of his body he wants to hit it with, so he kind of jumps into the ball and then his body kind of just freezes and he doesn't know what to do, and then by that point it's too late. It kind of seems similar to that before.
Clumsy.
So
Totally clumsy.
Yeah. And then the second goal, I was saying last week when we brought in Wallacott, Johnson was like, he's a goalkeeper that is known for being good with his feet. He's the type of player that, you can just trust. And that's what I said on the podcast last week, thinking this is great, Harry. We're saying things that make sense. And then like his second or third game for Hibs, he decides to just pass the ball to their left winger because it's about 10 yards short of Cadden. Cadden's getting no blame for that, in my opinion. And then from there, they just
Interesting,
Jordan
like,
White Dunnis.
I don't know how many league games he's played, but I know he's played 2 against Ross County, and he has made mistakes that have directly cost us 3 points in the games because his mistake made it 2-2 at Easter Road. I wouldn't necessarily blame the entire night on him, and probably not at the weekend either, but just a poor goalkeeper. It was actually probably the one little part of last week's episode I would encourage anyone that hasn't listened to it to go back and do so. Obviously, I wasn't on, and it was maybe one part of the episode that I'd sort of disagreed with the consensus. I know he's, by the time he got to Wallacott, it was like, fuck, we need to have at least one goalkeeper on the books, but I'd look to move him on if I could, and if I had to keep one of the 2 goalkeepers, I would simply hand Marshall another year. He's a more experienced goalkeeper that ultimately, why would you move on a goalkeeper to keep another one that hasn't been good enough to displace him? Now, I wouldn't want to see David Marshall starting games, but if it was a toss up between Wallacott and Marshall to sit on the bench next season, then I would take Marshall every day of the week personally. Like that was just the one, but that was the. I think Marshall was the first goalkeeper he came on to, and obviously the way the format and stuff. But I would rather see David Marshall on the bench than Wallacott next season on the evidence that we've seen this year.
I'd rather see neither of them.
Aye,
I think I made my
yeah,
thoughts on that quite clear. I don't. Yeah, I'm not really judging Wallacott so much off his performances because he has been poor when he's played in the limited game time he's had. He has been poor. The issue for me more with Wallacott is the wages that he will be on as a goalkeeper that we pay the fee for ultimately to be a first choice type goalkeeper. And he hasn't been good enough at any point this season to replace a goalkeeper who's been okay to poor, depending on which part of the season you look at. So
totally.
this is why we
Yeah,
desperately need a new goalkeeper, which we're going to touch on.
yeah.
Oh, the big man. I love a segue. And guys, we are here to talk today. We're going to forget about the negativity of the weekend. Screw that. It's a glorified friendly, blah, blah, blah. We are here to talk about replacing the goalkeeper situation we have. And please, Lord above, help us in replacing this centre-back issue that we've had for about 9,000 days now. Guys, let's talk about what goalkeeper targets we feel Hibs should be targeting as well as the centre backs. We'll come on to goalkeepers first. So obviously, situation as we called it there. We've got David Marshall, Wallacott, Boric out on loan, Murray Johnson probably too young to come into first team football at Hibs. Essentially, we've not got a starting goalkeeper in our eyes. If we were to start next season with either Wallacott or Marshall starting, we'd probably say it's been a bit of a disaster of summer. I think that's a fair comment to make. So, Ewan, I'll give the floor to you. Is there any target that immediately springs to mind when someone says, who do you want Hibs to go for next season?
Oh, there absolutely is in terms of, like low hanging fruit. St Johnstone goalkeeper, Mitov, I think will be the top of our list for a lot of football clubs this summer, especially if St Johnstone go down. There's no way he'll hang around there. However, he isn't the player that I've sort of brought to the table. I don't. And maybe yourself or Liam will have brought him, but I think we spoke about him before anyway. Just if neither of you twos do, but it was another goalkeeper in the Scottish Premiership that I have brought forward, and I'd seen quite a lot of the replies to the tweet that we sent out in sort of advertisement of tonight's episode, saying basically anyone but him. So I thought I would present the argument for Bournemouth, currently on loan at Kilmarnock, Will Dennis. 6 months ago, had I been asked this question, Will Dennis's name was put forward. It's not a goalkeeper that would have jumped off the page at me or someone that I would have been remotely interested in. It's, I suppose, makes sense given that he's part of employed by the Black Knight Group ultimately. He has got a better save percentage than any other goalkeeper in the league this season. Above Mitov, above Jack Butland, who was nominated for Player of the Year, all of the players. I think he has now settled at Kilmarnock in a team that I think have conceded the 4th most goals in the league, only one more than Hearts, I think. He's got the 3rd most clean sheets, and he's 4th in the goals prevented tally, which I know is that's something that we have used and many others have used as as a measuring stick on our current goalkeeper. So I think he would be a very sensible move. He's got a year of experience in the league. And there's another factor in here for me, Harry, where you guys spoke about Murray Johnson last week. I would like to see Murray Johnson go on loan next season with a view to eventually becoming the Hibs number one. I don't think bringing Will Dennis in on loan even for a year, he's under contract at Bournemouth until 2026, would be a bad thing to then see how Murray Johnson progresses. Because if you want Murray Johnson to progress, there needs to be an opportunity to see him into the first team and potentially bringing in a number one on loan next season who can play all 38 games so out with our league. And then that opens up that window depending on how Johnson develops out on loan as well for his transition into the first team. It would make sense to me, part of that group, but also a very capable goalkeeper at this level. I was actually quite surprised at the volume of people saying they had no interest, and some of them was very much like anyone as long as it's not Will Dennis, and it was interesting to me. I don't know. I think he did make a mistake against Hearts, and I don't think he covered himself in glory at Easter Road this season. I think Josh Campbell put one through his legs, which never looks great. But no, a goalkeeper for me that would come in and tick a lot of boxes. Done my research.
I think the case against them would be, you rightly point out they didn't have a good start to the season at all. I think the case against them would be not just that, but mostly save percentage and a lot of his metrics are obviously more positive. He isn't someone who looks particularly comfortable with the ball at his feet.
No.
Now, I guess that depends on how highly you place that in your sort of level of importance, because one of the other goalkeepers that's been suggested quite heavily, whose name I'm not going to mention just yet, doesn't really also have much of a track record of having the ball at his feet. Not a particularly good passer of the ball, not a good long passer of the ball either, and does play for a team where, I think it's probably unfair to call Kelly a long ball team, but they're certainly a longer ball team than we are.
So he ranks in the top. He does rank in the top 10% for accurate long balls across the season, but his pass accuracy is poor. However, I do think that plays a part in it, Liam. The expectation at Kilmarnock isn't necessarily to roll it out to your centre back 10 times a game, which these are things that can obviously stat pad, if you like. You know what I mean? But his longer accuracy. His longer ball accuracy is good, and it does rank well in comparison to those in the league. But again, it's a team that are set up to do that. So there's pros and cons with it all. And what I've tried to do on tonight's episode is think practically, which I'll get onto with my centre back choices as well. It seems realistic. It makes sense for me. It's something that should be achievable. And whether it was permanently or just for a year, I think we would be in a better position than we are now.
Yep. So if gun to your head, your top option would be Will Dennis.
No, it would be Mitov.
Okay,
but I think he'll be out of reach this summer. I think he'll go back down south. He's done okay in England and then has a good season here.
It was Cambridge Player of the Year or something, apparently, for St Johnstone signed him.
Yeah, so I'd be... No, Mitov would be my number one choice. I've been impressed with him every time Hibs have played them this season, alongside what, you only see the highlights of games not involving Hibs, but seems to make a lot of good saves. But there is always that age-old thing, like if you're facing a lot of shots, it's probably easier to make more saves, and he's always active. Was it the best goalkeepers make that one save a game they need? But no, I think he would be my number one choice. I think
should have given away a penalty Easter Road as well.
Aye, that's true. That's true.
So whilst they did have a good game in terms of shot stopping, that was incredibly rash, and he was very lucky to get away with that, I would say.
Liam, talk to us. Who's top of your list?
Right. So I tend not to be hugely ambitious when we come to this in terms of signings, and I tend to look for the players who I think are well within our grasp. But I think given the importance of the rebuild that needs to be done this summer, I think we need to be a wee bit more ambitious. And I think the goalkeeping position is a place where you start from, which you push the boat out a wee bit, because we haven't had a good goalkeeper now since Marciano, which is 3 seasons?
Yeah. Who you would say we pushed the boat out for, probably? We spent a bit of money on.
So this next guy has played in the English Premier League. He probably is a name that I think most of our listeners will know because he did spend a bit of time up here as well. And it's Leicester City's second choice goalkeeper, Danny Ward, formerly of Liverpool, of course, as well. Now, Danny Ward's 30 years old. He's second choice, hasn't played at all for Leicester City this season. I know he's had injury problems in the past, but goalkeeper who's obviously performed at a very high level in the past, was playing in the Premier League, like actually playing in the Premier League just a couple of seasons ago, is playing for a team that are promoted, who I think there's likely to be quite a big changeover in their squad come the summer, given the backing that the manager's got. Now, having said that, Danny Ward is going to be on Premier League type wages, so clearly it would need to take something for the player. The player would need to want to leave, and the player would need other offers to consider us. But I just think someone of that reputation, someone whose club has maybe financial fair play considerations, I think would be a good target and potentially a bit of a culture setter in the reset that we require in the summer.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. He wasn't great at Aberdeen, but went on and had a really, really strong career. Like Liam said, he was their
I thought he
regular.
got good at Aberdeen. Was not shit
Mm.
at the start and then he became good.
Maybe I'm sure I can't. I just remember him being recalled in the January. I don't really remember. He was obviously in goals for Dominic Malonga's goal, and the cup, which was lovely. Aberdeen also had another player on loan from Liverpool that season, Brad Smith, an Australian right back, I think.
Oh, I remember that, man.
But just Liverpool, he was horrible, and Liverpool punted him for like £12 million to Bournemouth, and I don't think he ever kicked a ball for them. So thank God there's new owners in at Bournemouth before we got tied up with him. But I think that's a really interesting shout, Liam. When you first said it, I was like, I don't know, but Leicester are fucked. They need to get players off the books. If they'd stayed in the Championship, they were getting a transfer embargo. Like, I think they're starting the season with a points deduction as well, so there will be some serious wages kicking about that squad that they'll probably be happy to offload. So why the hell not?
I like the show. The only thing is though, like, was his peak ever that good? I remember that when they got relegated, like there was a lot of talk of
He
like,
was stinking.
aye, like he did have a
Well,
really
it's Premier League stinking,
I
isn't it?
know, I
You know
know,
what I
I
mean?
know. Like it's a different level, and in my head as well, like just kind of the like reputation that he brings. It does feel very David Marshall. I know he's not at like the tail end of his
Yeah.
career as much as Marshall was, but that was like this isn't me being like that's a terrible. I think the show is good, but just wanted to put those points
He
to
is
Nah.
the
see what you
current
thought.
Wales #1, I think.
I think he does generally perform. He's one of those players who performs quite well for Wales, but maybe hasn't performed quite as well at club level. I think the other thing he's got against him, and look, to be honest, like any goalkeeper we're going to sign is going to have some amount of flaws. But the thing he's got against him is, I think he's played 27 league games since 2018, so he's not a goalkeeper that's in regular use, from a club perspective, which definitely can count against him. But I'll be honest, I had another shout, and my other shout has not. I've never seen the boy play, so I thought I'd go with the safe option and just go with Danny Ward.
Well, I'll throw in my option quickly. It's a
Mhm.
very obvious one. So the things I like is if you can get a good caliber player that is used to the league, that's great. If you can get a player that is, as you know, when it comes to goalkeepers, I want them to be able to save. That's my number one priority. And he, to this day, I think had the best performance Easter Road of any goalkeeper I've ever seen. Liam's nodding his head. I think he knows who it is, and I think he's good enough with his feet as well. Benjamin Siegrist obviously hasn't hit the ground running at all at Celtic, but I just think he's a shot
No, he just
stopper.
has hit the ground. He just fucking
Yeah,
fell
yeah,
face
That's
first.
understatement of the century. It's just
yeah.
no played.
Yeah, he's not played at all, but I think there's a very good player there. I know that relationship wise with Celtic, we've managed to get a few loans with him. I'm not sure what his contract situation is, but I think that's likely a player that we could acquire. I don't know if signing him permanently would be realistic, but I think from Celtic's point of view, if we can take half his wages on and he gets regular football, I don't think anybody loses in that situation. And he's a very good shot stopper. With his feet, he was fine. I know Dundee United fans, I think, used to complain a bit about his command of the box, but I think quite a lot of goalkeepers in Scotland suffer with that. But yeah, if he can save shots and he can pass better than Walcott did at the weekend, he gets a lot of ticks from me. So that'd be my shout. I know it's very obvious, but yeah.
I think it is interesting. He probably goes at Ward's obviously played more games than Siegrist, but these type of goalkeepers, their lack of minutes is what sort of makes them available to us. Or
Yeah.
then you are looking more at a Will Dennis or a Mito maybe, I don't know. But like if Danny Ward's lack of games could even potentially put him off championships clubs down south. You know, like they might look at him and go, well, do we want a bit of that? The only thing for me, Harry, is Seagrass, right? So he's been, I'm assuming, I don't think he's out of contract, so he's been happy to sit and be second,
Third choice.
third
Nice
choice
third choice. Doesn't go on the
goalkeeper.
bench.
Joe Hart's moving on obviously in the summer, but what's the incentive for him not to just see out his contract at Celtic? You know, like this maybe Celtic want to loan him out, but I would be surprised if someone that's been willing to ultimately at the best point of his career, I would think, go and sit in stands, that would he be willing to actually get off his arse and lose, because we're not going to pay him what Celtic are paying him. I would be surprised anyway. So
I don't know. Like, but I don't know the guy, so I can't speak to his character. I do think that a loan situation where he's still getting the wages that he's on and getting the first team football in my head makes sense.
and then who
If you're a
plays on the
footballer,
4 games against Celtic?
I know what people say in the sense that, like, oh, I'd love to be a backup goalkeeper. It'd be the dream. But surely, if you're actually a professional football player and you put your whole life into it, you'd have to be a proper loser to just take that money. So I would hope that isn't what he thinks.
And that's exactly where I come at that as well, Harry. Like my assumption is always to assume best of intent with every individual, and I think with a goalkeeper, like any position on the football pitch, you want to be playing, and you have had to probably work really hard to get to the level that you're at in any case. So why would you get to, I don't know, 32, 33, however old Seagrist is, and then all of a sudden just say, I don't want to play anymore? Like maybe he's at Celtic because he expects that he will get an opportunity. We don't know. I mean, maybe he doesn't. But I do think you're right about your point about you and saying that second choice goalkeepers is a market potentially that we're looking at, because you've got that carrot of first team football playing every week. I think the other market, to be honest, is the sort of Mitov market, that maybe even potentially Robbie McCrory's been another name that's been mentioned, where we go out and we spend to bring a goalkeeper in, because I think there's a chance that, I mean, I had a look at the free agent goalkeepers this summer. There's not a lot of names there that excite
Please
me.
no Liam Kelly. Just whatever we do, please do not put Liam Kelly in a Hibs jersey next season. Please, 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 please. Oh my God, that would just honestly, that'd be so sad.
I can't see it. I can't see it.
I still remember Liam Kelly. I was at the game last January, I think it was, and at the start of the game, for a
On
laugh,
my
every time he touched
birthday.
the ball, I started booing him. And then by the time it hit half time, literally every single time he touched the ball, the whole Hibs fan base was booing him. I was like, "Yeah, he's getting there."
Mate, but we were driving up the road. Like Lauren was there that was that day. Lauren was just like, what's Harry's issue with that goalkeeper? What's happened there? Like,
God.
oh dear.
But do you guys have any honourable mentions you want to throw out before I start listing off what some of our lovely
hear
listeners
Liam.
sent
Let's
in?
hear the listeners.
Cool. So
on you go.
I'll take us through from kind of the ones I think you guys will shoot down, and then we'll kind of work around from that way. There's only one I think you guys are going to shoot down. We had a couple of people, including Brendan McGinn and Jeff, suggest that we bring in Dabrowski. What do we think about bringing Dabrowski back?
A good highlight reel goalkeeper. Makes some really good save, like really impressive saves, real showstoppers. But he's had some howlers for air this season, which don't get shown, and I think that maybe skews people's view of them. Dabrowski was at the club for enough years that if he was good enough, he would have got an opportunity in a run team as first choice. Is my opinion. I might be wrong, but that's my opinion.
I agree with Williams said there. Like, I'm just being like as well. By the way, like Dabrowski's like 3 years older than, for example, Will Dennis. You know, like so, like just using that as the example. Like, if you are good enough to play in the Scottish Premiership, you will probably have done it before you're 25, 26.
Yeah, and one that I wasn't too keen on. We did get a few people send it in. Kev Wilson said Arthur Okonkwo, who is a free agent because his contract's running out at Arsenal. He won the Austrian Cup last year with Sturm Graz, and was first choice for Wrexham this season with 14 clean sheets in 36 appearances. He had an absolute clanger as the famous Hibernian Football Club defeated Arsenal at Easter Road, and that is the only thing I know about Okonkwo. I think he might have only been 19 at the time, based off what Kev said that he's 22 now. But I don't know. It wouldn't get me excited if we got a 22-year-old that had been playing League Two football last year as our like marquee signing for goalkeeper.
We
And if
beat Arsenal.
Wrexham, if Wrexham want him, he signs for Wrexham as well. He's been on loan there. Like Wrexham, even with the flow of money, Wrexham will be paying more wages than we will in League One next season.
I seen something that Wrexham aren't even about the top spenders in League Two this year. Their budget was
Oh,
like,
really?
aye, I know that was shocked me. I mean, I agree with you though. The money will be there. You know what I mean, especially after the promotion. Like, but so that just made me think. So that was what 3-4 years ago. And we beat Arsenal in pre-season, and all we needed them was a centre half and a goalkeeper. And here we are now, tipping that Arsenal youngster to maybe be that goalkeeper that we've needed. Like, so, oh, sorry. Oh, everything was good then, eh? Coming out of COVID, beating Arsenal, looking forward to the season, starting the season well. Ah,
And what was
beautiful.
class about that? They let me what do you call it? I got a meal deal because they didn't have the what do you call it,
Ah, you can
kiosks
take your
open, so you
stuff
had to
in,
bring your
eh?
own food in and that. I was pure chilling at Easter Road with a meal deal. I was like, this is good vibes, guys. I was liking it. Interesting one sent in by Rebel Hybe. And it was a Bournemouth goalkeeper, not Caldwell Dennis. Do you know it?
Oh, is it Mark Travers? The
Correct, Mark
Irish
Travers. Yeah,
goalkeeper.
Irish. I
Irish.
think he's got some tie. I think he maybe like one or two caps for the full team, but he's got a lot of like under 21s minutes. From what I'm aware, he's their sub goalkeeper at the moment. I want to say.
I, th-
Um,
I think I might be wrong. I think he was their number one
He was the season they went down, I
caused.
think.
Yeah, I was going to say that caused Aaron Ramsdale to leave Bournemouth and go to Sheffield United, maybe like a couple of years ago. Like I think he was playing for them, like in the Premiership, pretty recently. So obviously has the right standing and the right pedigree. And again, it's one of them like you're saying about a Danny Ward or a Seagrass, like backup goalkeeper ultimately is the market that we're looking at. It's just getting the right one, and that'll be the difficulty. But it should be a name that would excite you'd think with his experience, Harry.
I know definitely. Like that's the type of signing that if we made, I think even if it was a loan, that's something that would actually get me excited. Like
Mm.
I just obviously I can't speak too much because I've not seen him play too often, but or at all. But it's one of those ones in Football Manager I'm always sniffing around as well.
Well,
So
so
like,
you
I could do a
mentioned
little bit of that.
football. You mentioned Football Manager there, Harry, and I know you play it more, and Liam doesn't. So I'm going to ask this question at Liam. So if you put your football management hat on, if you're Bournemouth, would you want to get Will Dennis back in the door and maybe get Travers out to see, now let's see for that sort of transition. Like we're part of this group, so is it actually potentially more likely that you would get a Travers, like how you got an Emiliano,
Mm.
than a Will Dennis? But then obviously you signed Mirai Welsh as well, so it's a bit of balance in that.
I think, I mean, there's quite a lot of factors at play there, like wages, for example. I would imagine Mark Travers is on very, very good salary, whereas Will Dennis is probably less so. The older keeper, you maybe want them to be playing minutes though, as a
Mm.
trade-off, and it maybe puts him in the shop window if actually your long-term goal is to sort of move him on from the club. I mean, I really like the shout. I think it's a good suggestion. I think he played a bit for Stoke last season. Doesn't look as though he played that many, 13 games, 13 league games. So he's obviously been recalled for some reason because he wasn't there the second half of the season. So I wouldn't be against it. Certainly someone who's played at a level where they'd be able to handle the expectation. Do you know what I mean? I know Bournemouth are a small club in a big league, but they're still playing in a big league.
Mhm. Where did David Marshall leave to come to Hibs? What was like? I
Derby
think
County, I think. I
It
think
was
he's
it
at
was
Derby
Derby
County.
out of contract at Derby, yeah.
was that still Championship or were they League One at that
I
point?
think
League
they
One by that point, I
just
think.
I think they just been no, I think they were in the
Oh, really?
championship, but they'd just been relegated to League One
Right.
that season. I think.
Just because obviously we're talking about these Premiership goalkeepers, and straight away in my head it goes, "Oh, that seems unrealistic," or international goalkeepers. But we signed David Marshall this summer that he'd been Scotland's number
Yeah.
one, like,
Hmm.
and was probably only a couple of years removed from playing in the Premiership. So it is a position where you've probably got more of a chance of getting some experience like that. And like my head straight away when you were talking about your ones, I'm like, I don't see it. But then when you look at who we've already been able to bring in, maybe it is actually more realistic.
Hey, and
Fuck
I'm
up.
going to rattle off one of our favourite humans, G, Mr. Greg, has sent us in some
Mr. Greg
suggestions on
has sent
his behalf. Sorry, I think I'm echoing one of these. And I'm just going to rattle off what he said and some of the detail he gave, and then if you guys want to give reactions afterwards, that'd be awesome. So first of all, is all three of these free agents, so you know G when he's scouting for them, if they can get them with no fee, perfect. So Jonathan Bond is dual nationality, English to Welsh. And he's 30-year-old, 6'3", has plenty EFL experience, including 2 loans to Reading in 2017-18, and last played for LA Galaxy. Fredrik Ibsen, another free agent who is Danish, 27-year-old, 6'1", spent his career in Denmark, showed early promise at Copenhagen, but not lived up to that after leaving the Danish Giants. For you NFL fans, it is not the head coach, but Sean McDermott, who is a dual national Irish to Norwegian, 30-year-old, 6'1", born in Norway, joined the academy at Arsenal before going back to Norway, had a brief stint in Romania at Dinamo Bucharest, last at Kristiansund. Apologies for my Nordic pronunciations; they're probably not very good.
How are you playing for in Bucharest with a surname McDermott? How's that happening? It should. Sorry.
I just got a wiki page up for him, and he looks so Nordic. It's unbelievable. He does not look Irish in the slightest. I mean, he was born in Kristiansund, but he played for Republic of Ireland at under 21 level. Do you know what? Based on appearances and based on the clubs that he's played for, I wouldn't be against having a look at that. I actually quite like the Fredrik Ibsen shout as well. That's a market that we sort of dipped our toes in with Melkerson and Runar Hauga. And I feel like there is potential there within that market, the sort of Nordic, Scandic countries, to go and sign some good young up and coming players, because we typically sort of pay slightly more than those kind of clubs, but we seem sort of almost reticent to go back there, maybe because of the Melkerson and Hauga examples. But I mean, Hauga wasn't a good football player, right? But Melkerson wasn't a bad player. It's just that he just was a player who we signed at the wrong stage of his career. All I'm saying is I would quite like us to sign some Norwegian cunts.
Just to say on Hauga, like, he is the Norwegian Big Dave. Ken how when we signed Slivka, we just brought in a random Lithuanian, so he had a mate. Like, that's the only reason we brought Hauga in, because surely wasn't he brought in for his footballing abilities. Apologies, Hauga, if you listen to the pod to this day. I'm sure all the Hibs players listen all the time. Anyway, in terms of other goalkeepers, Ake, who runs the Hibs blog Leaf Lights, sent in 2 names, which are Andreas Hansen from Norgeland. I always pronounce that one wrong. As well as Nathan Trott from Velge. If you want to get more details on that, and he done a full transfer window preview, definitely give Leaf Lights a read. And then Ryan Smilly sent in Paul Izzo from Melbourne Victory. Do you guys know anything about him?
He
No,
was sort of viral-ish, wasn't he? Because he made a save and then scored a penalty in a penalty shootout in the A-League a couple of days ago. I think he's like sort of approaching 30. There's something about signing a goalkeeper from the A-League that just gives me Mark Birighitti vibes. I'm just going to say it. It's bias. It's terrible to say it, but yeah, I don't want us to sign the 2024 Mark Birighitti, because we all know how that worked out.
Was he not the A-League goalkeeper of the year?
He was.
Aye.
He was. Mark Birighitti, this is. Yes, he was goalkeeper of the year. Incredible.
And he was our goalkeeper of the year as he got Dundee United relegated, so we loved him for it. 2 years in a row, what a guy.
Aye, still managed to make a fucking wonder save at Easter Road for Kyle McGuinness hit an absolute thunder bastard. Oh God.
We never got rest from goalkeepers. But speaking of rest from goalkeepers, have you guys got any other ones you want to mention, or are you happy to move on?
I got told one, I brought one.
There we go. There we go. Okay, so moving on to defenders. We'll kick off with Stephen, famous 1875. And he said, of course, Jason Kerr from Wigan, and Stuart Findlay from Oxford United. You and Jason Kerr, would that be a move that would excite you?
Yeah, Blue, absolutely, but it would come with some caution. He's just off a long-term injury, but has done pretty well at Wigan when fit and when in the team. Obviously done very well at St Johnstone. A player that many Hibs fans think is a travesty that hasn't already kicked a ball for Hibs. Pretty well known that he's a Hibs fan, and it would make sense, wouldn't it? But it's just for his ambitions. Like a player that moves down to England, he probably could have played in Scotland. He probably could have come to Hibs or Aberdeen or whatever after leaving St Johnstone, but made the step to England. I would expect that he might see his future in England still. He's still a young guy, will want to make a career around in that league. And unfortunately, I think where we are in the food chain, players of that profile might see Hibs in the Scottish Premiership as a later career move if it needs to be, because he's won a cup double in Scotland. He's not really got anything else to achieve other than to play with the team he supports. So that can be done at a later stage if I was to put myself in his shoes.
The other one named there, Stuart Findlay, left-sided centre back. That's got me fully on board. But Liam, what do you think of that shout?
Kelly fans have been raving about him this season. I think he has had a good season. He's a player who we've talked about probably, I'd guess, 4 out of the last 6 transfer windows we've talked about him as potentially looking at him. Probably primarily because he's left-sided, and secondarily because I think he is quite a good defender at this level. I don't think he is take it to the next. He's probably a good signing for where we are at the moment. But is he the signing that's going to help us over the next 2-3 years get to where we want to be? I would have some caution about that. So it depends what we need. Do we just need guys to get us through next season to make us a better team? Then yes. But should Stuart Findlay want to come to Hibs in a short-term contract? I don't know.
Okay, but before we get into anybody else's, we'll run through our ones quickly. I'll start off with my one, and kind of similar to what we touched on goalkeepers. This one, budget-wise, might not be entirely within our realm. However, when I think centre-back, I want a leader. And you know what I think is a massive hole at the club? I don't know if this is going to be unpopular. I think we really need a captain. I think with Paul Hanlon not being in the team every week, I love Joe Newell, but I just don't think is the right figure to be captain for Hibs. I would love Liam Cooper. I know he's out of contract at Leeds. I think that he's got his eyes on getting back into the Scotland setup and trying to get himself back in the team. And I think that if he could come to Hibs, be captain, get us fighting for the third, fourth in the league, that would mean that we'd had a much better season defensively, and that he would probably have been quite a significant part of that. I think if you've watched any of Scotland or you've watched any of Leeds over the last however many years, he's just a proper defender, and he's the type of guy that at the start of the game will set the tone by rocking through someone, but he's also nice enough that he can make competent passes without under pressure, without you having to shit yourself. So for me, he's about everything that I think we could expect from a Hibs centre back. I know he's not left-footed, is he? No.
Yes, he's
left-sided. Oh, fucking hell. All right, sign him. Give him the whole... Screw everybody else. We'll sign Liam Cooper and that's the summer done. Perfect. I can't believe I forgot that. But yeah, there you go. That's my shout.
It's a good shout, Harry. It's been floated on here already and a couple of weeks ago, but a really proud Scotsman for the heart of Yorkshire. But it would be an incredible signing, and you want to talk about statements of intent and stuff like that. If you can go out and get a player that started for Scotland in our last game. I'm sure he started against Northern Ireland. I was at the game. I'm almost certain he started. He is still very much a full international player for Scotland. He's one of Steve Clarke's favourites, I would suggest, if you like. A player that has been in the squads for a long time, and a player that if he came up to Hibs this summer, I'd be over the moon with.
And then you, and after that, give us your one player that you've brought.
I thought we had 2. I've got 2.
Yeah, you got 2 centre backs.
You had 2. Yeah, sorry. I'm
right or left first, Harry. I've tried to think. I've went down a route here. I've tried to build a partnership. Do you want the right side first or the left side first?
Give us a left then. That's my favourite side.
Right. Well, I've went for Stuart Findlay's backup. No, look. I think I've went for Robbie Dees. It's a player that I think I spoke about early this season. Highlighted the fact that if he had a good season at Kilmarnock, he's a player that I thought Hibs should look at. Kelly only signed him on a 2-year deal. He hasn't played every week at centre back for Kilmarnock. He has played at left back quite a lot this season, but he is predominantly a left-sided centre back. Now, that might sound on the face of it stupid. Why would you want to sign a player that can't start for Kilmarnock to play at centre back for Hibs? But Kelly ultimately have 4, in my opinion, very good centre backs in their squad this season.
He sometimes plays at all 4 in a back 4 as well, it should be noted.
And he has won more aerial duels than anyone in the league this season. He ranks in the top 10% of defenders in the league for all duels overall. And apologies, my stats all disappeared on me there after that. But he's a good age. He's 24. I don't think it would cost loads to get him out of Kilmarnock, in the sense that, like I say, they've got 2 more under contract currently who are good options. And would they look to go and bring Stuart Finlay in the summer? That could, if we offered them money for Robbie Dees, would that free them up to do that? They want to bring in Corey Ndaba, who's been playing for them a lot this season. He's at Ipswich currently. So, for me, it makes sense. I think it's a good profile for Hibs. He would be a marked improvement as far as I'm concerned. You look at the sort of schooling, if you like. There's a lot of Hibs fans that want Derek McInnes as the Hibs manager. I wouldn't go that far, but I think a player who has played under him and has been trusted and drilled as a defender for a year with him would be a good start. And I think he would be a marked improvement on what we've got currently. And again, feels like a realistic one. I'm always very boring on these shows because I like to talk about what I know, and ultimately Scottish football is about the extent of my knowledge these days. So Robbie Dees is the one for me. A player that I really would have liked if we went after last summer when he was moving on from Inverness.
And do you want to give us the other one then as well?
Yeah, well, so this is going to sound, I don't know if anyone's read the Evening News's article about free agents. I'd just like to say that I fell in love with this player before I read this article. He is the number 1 listed player on the article the Evening News have released today, and it is Josh Knight of Peterborough. And he, to me, is the polar opposite of what Robbie Dees is. So much like Will Dennis earlier, where Liam was saying, Robbie Dees' sort of ability on the ball might not be perfect. He doesn't rank very highly for accurate passes, successful passes, etc. But that could also be a product of his environment. Knight is the polar opposite of that. He's 26 years old. He's scored more goals than anyone else, any other defender in League One this season. He plays more accurate passes per 90 minutes than anyone else in the league, bar one player from centre back. But potentially what lets him down is the aerial ability. He's sort of only winning about 60% of his aerial duels. However, I think if you can get a nice balance in your centre back pairing, where you've got one that's very comfortable on the ball and one that can be then freed up to go and win the headers and command the area, which I think Robbie Dees would do. Knight is very capable of stepping forward. You can go on YouTube and spend however long you want watching clips of him stepping forward, creating chances. He won Wickham Player of the Season in 2020, 2021 when Jordan Obita was there. And how I stumbled upon Knight was that I thought, well, where have we had success from bringing players in, and where have other teams had success in our league of bringing players in from? So we brought Jordan Obita in from Wickham. Josh Knight played at Wickham. Hearts have brought in Frankie Kent, who's probably been one of the best defenders this season, from Peterborough this season. And we've seen tried so many times of players coming up from down south where players have sort of failed to adapt. But I think Peterborough and Wickham there's been a little bit of success there. Joe Newell obviously had some success at Peterborough as well. So unfortunately, going straight to Hertha Berlin didn't bring me any centre backs that I thought Hibs could sign, because if I was looking at successful signings, then I would have been going there. But Josh Knight leaped off the paper to me as a free agent. My only concern would be, again, much like I said about Jason Kerr, is his sights set somewhere else in terms of maybe doesn't view the Scottish Premiership. But he's 26, and it's only the last couple of years probably that he's really, really kicked on. And look, we should have some money to throw at players hopefully this summer. That's my two. That's what I want.
Yep. I think that'd be a pretty solid centre back duo. I wouldn't complain with it myself. Liam, do you want me to give my other backup option that I've remembered now that we had to give two, or do you want to go for your two first?
You go, mate.
Cool. Being fully frank, this is a name that I was aware of. Again, I've had him in Football Manager a couple of times, and got sent it on Twitter. And I think it's a great shout. Kieran Brown, currently another left-footed Oxford United player. Long story short, he's Northern Irish. He's had a couple of caps, and he was their Player of the Year from both supporters and Players Player of the Year in the 2022-23 season. And yeah, I think he's a left-footed centre back, guys. What else is there to possibly love? And also, just because we don't have enough of them, he can do a long throw. So
Is this the guy that was at
perfect.
Livy? Is this the one the
Correct,
boy with
yeah,
long
yeah.
hair that was at Livy?
Yeah.
Don't really remember him being that remarkable for Livy. Was he good
He's
for
there.
Livy?
So
Kieran Brown.
he was the type of player
Looks
that
like
was
a
similar.
pirate.
Pardon?
Looks like a pirate.
Yep,
Wee bit,
correct.
aye.
It does actually. Similar to Big Fucking John. I loved that when we went to Livy, and then they literally the whole game just had their drum and they were singing Big Fucking John. And that was their whole song. But he just puts himself on the line. He's just overly committed, and I think he's the type of guy that fans would just adore because of how much effort he'd put in. I don't think he'll be an absolute whiz on the ball, but again, I think he's a proper centre back that will do his best to keep the goals at the back of the net, mate. So I think that'd keep me happy.
Do you think we keep saying might not be good in the ball or is good? Are we overplaying what we act like? Yeah, we want our centre backs to pass the ball, but that's all we're asking them to do. We're not asking them to we are. I don't think we're asking them to progress up the pitch all that often. It is. I still feel like the main build-up point is to get the ball into the midfield, the deep line midfielder. I think they need to be comfortable, but I don't think we're asking them to do anything abnormal. I don't know.
I think the English lower leagues, a lot of them are quite head it and kick it leagues. And it's probably a bit unfair because there are teams down there that play football. Of course, there are absolutely, but I think a lot of the guys that we were talking about are maybe accustomed to playing in a league where, because you play twice a week, a lot of the time you are playing the percentages in a lot of the games. You look at Kieran Brown's career; he's not really maybe played for anyone. I think Oxford United, based on the little bit I've seen them play okay football, but 2 years at Livingston, we know the kind of football Livingston play, and then a handful of games for Cardiff City before that. So
a fun
think it's
fact about
hard.
Kieran Brown as well is he started at the Wealdstone Raiders. If you remember the guy who says, "You want some, I'll give it you." So I like a player as well like that who kind of made his way through the proper trenches of football, and then obviously managed to get himself a spot at Livy.
You do know that the team's just Wealdstone, though. It's not the Wealdstone Raiders.
Oh well, I'm calling them the Wealdstone Raiders. I don't care.
They're not an American football team, mate. like the Wealdstone Raiders.
Aye,
Rawr.
you want some, I'll give it you.
Your team is shit. You got no fans.
Second player that's played for Wealdstone who got a mention tonight, by the way, because I'm pretty sure the goalie that was mentioned earlier played for Wealdstone. Forgotten his name already. Okonkwo or maybe Dennis. One of them definitely played for Wealdstone, I'm sure. Anyway, I saw that when I was on FOTMob earlier trying to get some info. I'll give you my first one because you will definitely know this player, and you will definitely have an opinion of him from his time up here. He hasn't played in Scotland for quite a long time now, but he was at our City rivals on loan quite a number of years ago. Now, to be honest, when a guy has played for them on loan, unless they've done something that's really pissed me off, I'm not really that arsed about their previous connections. I know for some people who, and believe it or not, there are people in the world who are more petty than I am. I know for some people that would put them off. But I think this guy, so Harry, right, what would you say if I told you I could solve our problem with conceding from crosses into the box?
I'd be pretty happy.
Right. I think this guy, based on his physique, his ability in there, but also his game intelligence, having played quite a number of games since he was last up here, will have developed a lot as a footballer. And I know he's quite well thought of at the club he's at the moment. But his contract is up in the summer, and that is QPR's Jimmy Dunn. So Drogheda lad, good part of Ireland. That he is very good in the air. very good from a sort of defensive dual perspective. Tackles maybe less so, passing slightly less so. He is very much a defend first defender. He's actually played a wee bit of right back this season for QPR, which would really surprise you based on the kind of player he was up here. He's got that recovery pace that we're looking for as well, I think. Not slow across the ground. He is my suggestion. Harry, I can see you hate it. Tell me why.
That is my least favourite thing I've ever heard you say on the podcast. I genuinely think he is one of the epitomes of Hearts bastard. When you said loan, I thought maybe he played like a couple of games I couldn't remember, but he was a proper dick. Like when we played at Tynecastle, I still remember. Like if you say he's one of those players. If you mentioned to Craig, who's been on a few times on the podcast, if you mentioned to Craig Jimmy Dunn, he'd be like, "Oh, Harry fucking hates him," and I see whilst I was working it out in my head. At one point, we'll be able to watch this back, and you can see in my head when it clicks. I'm like, he's not going to fucking say Jimmy Dunn. He's going to say any other player in existence at time. But yeah, I'm in that category of fans. I would not like it because I think he's too much of a Hearts bastard. But Ewan, what would you think of Jimmy Dunn? Would you be able to see past it? What?
He's a wank. I just remember him doing. He done an interview after the derby. He totally played it. But by the way, mate, if he was willing, you know what I mean? Like that would they fucking adored him. So that would just make it interesting. You know, there is that angle to it as well. Like if he came in and he did play well and like that sort of all of a sudden he'd be a hero. So, that's how fickle football fans are. We'd all be absolutely livid to start with. But, he comes in and plays a good first 5, 6, 7 games and says the right things, then absolutely no cunt cares. You know what I mean? Like, that's the harsh reality of it.
I know he's obviously wound a few years up, but he was only there for half a season on loan for Burnley. Like, it's not like he was a guy who was there and he was, part of the furniture. And he's Irish, right? So, like, of the two clubs in Edinburgh that he could play for, we should create a slightly more welcoming environment for him, you'd have thought. So, I think he's a player we should have on our radar.
And for Liam's second player, he's going to get James Tavernier from Rangers.
Just to say, sorry, I do think as a player, it would be a very good move. If that 6-month loan had been at Hilly or St Mirren or Aberdeen, then absolutely, he is a good defender. He is.
Right, I've got two left-sided centre backs. I'm going to go for the one that's more attainable because the main shouts I've had so far have been quite sort of stretching the budget and recognising we've maybe spent quite a lot of our budget, but still recognising the left-sided centre back is important. This is a player I think we have potentially looked at in the past. I say potentially because I don't know for sure, but it's Notts County's captain Kyle Cameron, who is a Scotland under-21 international. He's, as I say, left side, has played a wee bit at left back. He has spent most of his career, started off at youth at Newcastle, but has spent most of his career either in the English lower leagues, albeit he had a very short loan spell at Queen of the South. He's 27-year-old, so he's kind of getting into that sort of prime age sort of stage. I think he is potentially someone who you would be looking at maybe taking on a leadership role potentially within the club. Albeit he is playing for Notts County in League Two, and I have said before here that League Two is not a good level. Any level that Harry McCurdy can go and score 20 odd goals in a season cannot be that good. So, without wishing to sort of trash, I do think he's a player though that kind of stands out maybe a wee bit more than most at that sort of League Two level. But clearly it would be a risk because I do think it is a bit of a step up coming up here. But he's definitely someone who is within, I think, our sort of financial powers to go and get. I think he's a more realistic approach than the other one.
Well, do indulge us.
Just to say, I think that sounds delightful. I think that's a good profile of player. That I think.
I just said he's left-sided, mate, and you were all.
Mate, that's a profile of player. But I do think there's a gap for us to try and get Scottish players that are doing well at an okay standard and bring them back. So yeah, no, I like the shout. Go on.
Do indulge us with the second one. Come on.
Right, so my other one, right, and this is just purely on the basis, right, that his club have just been promoted to the Premier League at the weekend. But I suspect if they have ambitions of being in the Premier League and remaining in the Premier League, they will need to recruit. And this guy could see himself surplus to requirements. He is also out of contract at the end of the season, albeit the club have got a 1 year option, and that is Ipswich Town's Cameron Burgess, who I think made the evening news list.
And last,
I
we've had it all.
I know. Left-sided again. He was born in Aberdeen, but has got dual nationality for Aberdeen, Scotland. Has actually played a couple of times for Aberdeen, Scotland, Australia. Sorry, dual for Australia and Scotland. Has played a couple of times for Australia. 28 years old. This is a guy who I have seen play a wee bit. Because I've been following Ipswich. I've got a wee bit of financial interest in their promotion this season. And he's been very solid, albeit hasn't played every game for them. Still played 30 odd times in the league. Quite a robust sort of defender, but he is one who can play. So if you wanted a guy who could get down on the deck and play it, he would definitely fit that mould. So that's my other shout.
I'm sorry not to take us right back, Harry, and I'm sure the mention of Ipswich just makes you want to tell us all how right you were about Harry Clark. But the goalkeeper there,
Gladkey.
man, I don't see that he's going to be a Premiership standard goalkeeper as well. And it's like, but he has obviously had a good season. But they signed him as a League One goalkeeper. You know, he was one that I'd actually thought about in that sense. But I just thought, like, do you go from finishing second in the Championship, playing every week, to nobody else wanting you? You know, that was because he was very good at St Mirren as well. Very, very.
I do think Ipswich are a club we should sniff about, because when you get back-to-back promotions like that, ultimately what you do is you take a lot of your squad are sort of League One level players and then they end up being in the Premier League. Now we've seen with maybe Trent, who's a good example, it's a double promotions. Well, Bournemouth, if you go back far enough, I don't think they were 2 in 2 years, but 2 in 3 years. They did take a lot of the guys that had played in League One for them into the Premier League, and some of them were fine, they made it, and some of them just weren't good enough and have gone on to have really good careers at sort of a slightly lower level. So I do think when there's a double jump like that, you should look at the club and just see what are the guys that maybe they're already making the decision on to say, I don't think they're ready. Because even their second choice goalie, the boy Walton, Christian Walton, I think it is his name, he was a goalkeeper who was quite well reputed going back a couple of years. So I think they're one that we should have a sniff about.
I think that makes sense. Totally. Harry, any mention of Harry Clark, or have you?
I'm still adamant that he should have been significantly higher on our entire rating of every player that played that season. Because I think I don't think he's even let me have him in the top 10. I had him at like number 4 for myself or something because I thought he was class. But then
For 5 games.
Aye, yeah, but it was still class. But yeah, as you can see, is now apparently low Premier League, high Championship quality. So good on you, Harry, for getting the odd one right. Do you want to hear Greg's defender options?
Let's go for it.
Okay, so first is George Akore, who is dual national Danish to Ivory Coast. Ian? Is that
He's the one player on Greg's list that I actually knew. So
is that how it's pronounced for the nationality? Ivory Coastian? Ivorian. That's what I'm looking for.
Cote d'Ivoire, mate.
There we go. But he is a 31-year-old, 6'1", right-footed centre half who started at Nordsjælland and then moved to Aston Villa, returned to Denmark to play for Copenhagen and Aalborg, last seen in China. Physical, dominant, not overly technical. But that sounds good. Do you want to give a bit more insight into that, Liam, if you've heard of him?
No, much more than what Greg said. But you were talking about Football Manager earlier. Back when I did play Football Manager, this is how long ago it was. He was like one of the top rising prospects at centre back, probably going back to when he was like 19, so quite a long time ago.
Nice.
Big lad, could be very good for us.
Nice. And then there's this name's getting butchered, I'm so sorry. Gustavo Alfonso Dulanto Sanguinetti. I tried my best. He is that Peruvian Italian? He is a 28-year-old 6'5" who started his career at Rosario Central, spending 2 seasons in Peru before joining Boa Vista, then on to Sheriff Tiraspol. there's so many
Tiraspol.
difficult words here, my
Tiraspol.
God, in Moldova, and where he played in the Champions League. And the left-footed centre half then signed for Riga in a deal totaling 1 million and is now currently a free agent. And then the last one, this is Icelandic, and the pronunciation is just going downhill from here, boys. So there's Daniel Leo Gretarsson, who plays for Sonderjysk Fotball, is an Icelandic international, 27-year-old, 6'1", played 3 seasons in Iceland before moving to Ålesund in Norway, spent time at Blackpool and Slask Wroclaw, and is now back in and then was in Denmark. He's an Icelandic international, strong in the air, would be available for around 350,000 euros. So he's currently playing in Denmark for the teams whose name I butchered. Out of those 3, would it be George or Corey, just for sentimental value for yourself, Liam?
I think so, based on very little other than Greg's description of them. I think given he's the only one that you actually did a half decent job of pronouncing as well, I think maybe that's why we should go with that. I can actually visualize Greg's face as you're pronouncing those names, and I think it'd be something like that would be pretty much what he's doing.
Every week, Harry, every week.
It's back in order that we've got Harry to try and pronounce all of them when he can't even say Inverness. So like,
his attempt at Nordsjælland was quite good. Nigerland. Sorry to any of our Danish listeners on that one. Emiliano Marcondes doesn't tune in.
Oh Jesus!
Sorry, Harry.
No, that's all right. One other one again, giving a shout out to Aki, who runs Leaf Lights. He sent in Tin Plavetic from Austria Vienna. I'm not aware of him. I've not had the chance to read it all in depth yet, but I look forward to it. One other one I wanted to mention, again, this is a bit of Football Manager bias, but again, kind of filling my profile of leader, powerful. Who really cares if they're good on the ball because they're powerful and good in the air? Michael Hector, what a fucking legend, by the way. But honestly, he's a really good personality as well. And one thing that Liam touched on earlier, I think culture change is something that we need to have massively, and I think that you need to have like really powerful and like strong personalities to be able to achieve that. And I think that he'd be the perfect fit to kind of change us from the we've got at the moment to like come on and get them all G'd up for it. I can imagine him being proper decent for a big game. But yeah, guys, any other centre backs we've missed off our list? Most of the ones from our lovely listeners were the likes of Jason Kerr and Stuart Findlay, so that's why we didn't cover too many names. But yeah, any other names for you guys?
I do like the Michael Hector shout, I must admit, in terms of a player. I know you've mentioned him before. I know his injuries have been his issue for his career, I think. But if you could get him fit, maybe the famed Hibs fans like to try out the pay-as-you-play deal chat. Maybe the famed pay-as-you-play deal could come into force there, and we could just get someone on a 0-hour contract and just only play him for the minutes that he plays, because that would be a sound thing to do in this life. But I do like that name.
What it's difficult because you look at the January window and we have brought in some serious quality, but we still managed to bring in some duds. So it's just and by the way, that's the case since beyond January as well. Like for every Ellie Yuan, there's a Riley Harbottle, and unfortunately, we seem actually not that bad at bringing in quality in the final third. But not only have we not brought in enough of them, the centre backs that we have brought in, Harry, haven't been good enough.
And they've not been left-footed either.
Like,
yeah, I'm almost certain that Owen Bevan will return in the summer. I think given that he signed here on loan in January, we didn't get to see him play because of injury. I think he's almost certain to return. He's still under contract at Bournemouth. I'd be very surprised. He was the one, I think, from people who watched and looked to them as well. I think out of him and Triantis, I think he was the one that people had quite high hopes for in terms of what he could have brought to the table. So shame we never got to see him. He might come in the summer. He might be really good. At least we'll get his pre-season to assess him.
Is he only 19? Is that right? 1920? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think 1920. Yep. So plenty grown up.
It's not an issue as long as they're good enough. That's the thing. Like I know we're talking about wanting experience and all that, but youth, if you're a good football player, you're a good football player. But something I know not to sort of detour us. I know we're talking about bringing players in, but like Ryan Poitras obviously left last January, so over a year ago, and I was just thinking, like, wait, who's the next academy? Who's playing? Who's our best academy centre back? Like, who is supposed to be the one that is making the step into the first team again soon? Like, because again, we hear about the forward players or we hear about the midfield players that are making the step up, but it's just like, because that in itself, you would like to think if you can get that right as well, it stops you from having to try and bring in, like, I can't, like I say, I can't even have a name spring to my mind of anyone.
Probably Jacob. I don't think Jacob Laney's going to make it now. I'd be surprised now if he gets a first team opportunity, given he's been at East Fife and not really managed to force his way at the team. Harry hadn't even heard of him, and he's supposedly an East Fife fan. So, I do think, I don't think there's, yeah, I don't know a huge amount about this current crop that are in this sort of under 18s at the moment, but yeah,
Development just landed on its face. Like you've signed that like Kyle McClelland and Del Ferry, who they were the types of players that you would have been, if the model had worked perfectly, you probably would have been looking at them actually becoming first team regulars maybe going into next season if the model would work correctly after sort of a year and a half at the club. And it's just, yeah, it was just when I was sort of trying to look maybe even more internally to see if there was anyone there. Just there was nothing. I couldn't, it was disappointing because we should be, as a club, trying to nurture that, but it just doesn't look like the player is there, to take over that mantle, which is really disappointing.
After seeing what Gogic has done at St Mirren, is there any like defensive midfielders we could potentially look to like transition back? Because obviously he's just their best centre back, which is mental to think about. But is there anybody in midfield that we could potentially look at?
Obviously, take and put them into midfield.
I know, because Triantis has obviously been a bit of a disaster at centre back, but he looks pretty good in midfield. So just try to think of any ways we can mix it up for the rest of the season.
Sorry. I thought I took us off schedule asking about our youth players. You've asked us to look for a position there, but we've not looked into it yet. That's next week.
I don't want to see what Nohan Kenna looks like at centre back, to be honest.
Oh, goodness. But what's up?
Liam, did you not say we could try him at centre back last week? No? Or was that someone else?
No, I think that was someone else. I think I'd maybe said he had played there, but I wouldn't be championing that. I don't think. No, no. I just think maybe Dave said it. It's just you've got. I don't really want to go through another year of a guy learning the position. We've just had Will Fish and Rocky learning it for the last season. I just can't watch two guys learn how to play centre back for us for an entire season. I want us to sign the age profile that I mentioned, sort of 27 to 30, experience. I mean, I would take younger than 27 if they've played football, but just guys that are going to come in and actually understand what it takes to see games out as well. Because I think so much of our inability to see out games is just not having that sort of grizzly defender that will just clear their lines. And look, maybe someone like Jason Kerr is that player because ultimately he's played a lot of football for a guy that's 27. I know he's missed a fair bit through injury. Maybe it's one of the other names that's mentioned, like Harry's Michael Hector shout, for example. But I don't know. We need to. We'll come on to talk about it next week as well. But I also think that the defence need a wee bit of support with what's in front of them, and I do still think we need to sign that number 6 that we've been missing.
Shall we all pick a player from that someone else has suggested that we would go? Aye, that's one that I want. Harry, would you want to set us off? One of Liam's shouts or one of my own shouts?
Are we just doing like both positions or just centre back?
Whatever, do whatever you want. Maybe you didn't like any of our shouts.
I know. Liam's Cameron Burgess shout would obviously be the pinnacle. Like I think that would be a massive coup. I think any of the shouts that we've said that would like kind of give us hope for the new season, because there's some signings that we've made in the past that can actually get you excited even when things seem like they've went to shit. Like I remember even when John McGinn signed, even though it wasn't a player that we'd known too much about, like I remember the excitement and stuff going into that season that we'd get to see him play. So like I think we've been that bereft of centre backs in the last like 3-4 seasons that if we actually signed a big name that we knew for a fact was going to come in and have a really, really strong season, like some of the names we've mentioned, and if they had a left foot, I'm going to be delighted regardless. So whoever was left footed that we've mentioned, perfect, sign them, 10-year contract, great.
Liam, what about you? Anyone of my please?
When I pick one of G's, when I pick Jonas Sikori. not to not give you both credit because you've had some good ones, but I think you're Corey. I just that sort of like 31-year-old sort of very experienced, really athletic. If we're still going to next season playing that same system, he'll have the recovery pace as well, I think, to play that system. I do like Liam Cooper, but I think Liam Cooper's just going to have way better offers, to be honest. I just think in terms of realism, I think he would be a good signing, but I just can't see it.
I'll give you one each. I think you've convinced me, and I've convinced myself enough that Danny Ward is in reach, and that is a signing that I'd be comfortable that I think would do well. And I think Michael Hector, that ticks my boxes, Harry. Ticks my boxes, absolutely does. However, I am still going to be expecting a partnership with Robbie Dees and Josh Knight on opening day next season, with Will Dennis on loan wearing the number 1 and behind them. But it'll be interesting to see if any of these come to light. We've done not too bad in the past, mainly Liam, with predicting a couple of signings that might come in on these episodes. So who will be this year's Jake Doyle Hayes? That's what we'll see.
Who was my other one? Who was my other one that wasn't Jake Doyle Hayes?
There was one recently. I'm sure that had been mentioned. It might not have been yourself. Someone mentioned a name, and 6 months later they came in on loan, or I cannot remember. But there's been 2 or 3. I know it might have been Harry or Greg. Honestly, I cannot remember. But the Jake Doyle Hayes one was good. That was very good. I'll give you, because that hadn't even been in the papers or anything. But hey, who will it be? Who will it be?
That sounds good enough to me. Right, we'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Cheers.